Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo News. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi.
Hello, 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 and welcome to a special edition of Rossifari Zoo News. That's right, y'all. We are going to dive into one of our special episodes where we don't really touch on any of the zoo news stuff or anything that's going on in my life this week, because we have a topic that we need to cover in great detail. You could even say that this episode is coming because of a dire emergency. That's right. We are going to talk all about Colossal Biosciences' claim that they have de-extincted the dire wolf. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. I thought of rushing one of these out as soon as this claim hit the general public, but instead I decided to wait until my normal Friday release because I wanted to spend as much time as possible researching, reading, talking to experts, getting the opinion of not only experts, but frankly of just people that I trust and like and love. And I don't think I've put as much research into a single topic or episode ever as I have for this one. So we're going to go deep. We're going to spend a lot of time on this. And I feel like when you walk away from this, you're going to have a really deep understanding of what we know so far about this story. And hopefully that will prepare you to talk to others who may be posting about it, because this one really seems to have just taken the country, if not the world, by storm. So, we're just going to dive right into it. No cutesy songs, no fun stories, nothing. Okay. Dire wolves have been de-extincted or not. Maybe, I don't know. So this one is a doozy, and I want to approach it from a couple different angles. First of all, before I do anything else about that, I want to thank everyone who sent me sources and info about this topic. In particular, I do want to thank the literally dozens of people I ended up having short and long conversations with about this topic, and especially give a shout out to Marissa Fonseca and Daniel Cohen, who each sent me a bunch of sources to look at and engaged in particularly deep conversations with me. So, like I said, I'm going to approach this from a few different angles, and we're going to start with the actual science. Then we'll dive into the marketing of this and what that might mean. And then we'll talk about whether Colossal is doing good or not, and kind of what that even means. And then we'll look at the scary side of this announcement, and then wrap it all up with a pretty bow. And yeah, I'm going to throw animal holidays in at the end because, why the heck not? And of course, for all of you who sent in stories for the normal zoo news, I'll be holding on to them for next week. And I'm always thankful to have all of you sending those in. But all right, let's dive into this. Let's start with the science behind this. And I'm just going to say this. Dire wolves are not back. They have not been de-extincted or unalived, or however anyone else wants to put it. Colossal Biosciences actually acknowledges this fact themselves. They happily explained the process they used, stating they extracted DNA information from direwolf bones and used CRISPR gene editing to introduce some of those elements into cells from gray wolves, using cloning technology to turn those cells into animals, namely 2 males named Romulus and Remus, and 1 female named Khaleesi after the Game of Thrones series, which also featured direwolves. Now, each animal has 20 genetic changes across 14 different genes. I've seen some articles that say 15, designed to make them larger, change their facial features, and to give them a snow white appearance, not the original Disney movie or the current remake that incels are telling everyone to stay away from, but like the color Snow White. On a quick side note about all of this, and kind of just a fun way to dive into the science a little bit here, while we don't know for sure, people who have studied dire wolves never assumed that they were that snowy white color. That idea actually came from Game of Thrones. In general, they're thought to have been kind of brownish or reddish, depending on who you talk to. So, like, not close to white. Now, outside of Colossal's own science team, geneticists, taxonomists, and conservationists largely agree that 20 genetic changes does not a new species make, or an old species make, I guess. With one quipping that those changes won't give you a dire wolf, but will give you a weird-looking gray wolf, I guess? I am by no means a taxonomist, as any of you who regularly listen know, but I did read what many of them think, and the general consensus is that these animals are certainly not Anochion dirus, which I believe is how you say the scientific name of dire wolves, but instead are Capus lupus, : dirus, parenthesis 15, end parenthesis. That's how it would be written. One taxonomist actually posted that exact thing on Colossal's announcement. And Colossal themselves responded by saying, quote, "We refer to these animals as dire wolves because they embody the key morphological traits, behavioral characteristics, and ecological functions that defined the species. They look like dire wolves," which is questionable, but still, "would function like dire wolves in an ecosystem," which we have no way of knowing, "and express genes specific to dire wolves," which is true, but only a few of them. And that very definition that they gave right there means that they are not dire wolves. And even the company who created these animals is actually willing to admit that. Going even nerdier and deeper into the science of this, Colossal claims they used gray wolves as the host for these genetic changes because they are the living animal that is the most closely related to dire wolves. But this is just not the case, which makes all of this even crazier to me. A 2021 paper called "Dire Wolves Were the Last of a New World Canid Lineage" found that the last common ancestor between the two species was around 6 million years ago, which means these species are not closely related. Interestingly enough, some of the authors on that paper work at, you guessed it, Colossal Biosciences. The paper states that basically dire wolves would have been closer to modern-day jackals than anything else, but then would have also evolved some wolf-like traits through convergent evolution. But that at a genetic level, the company would have actually been closer to creating a dire wolf by using a jackal than a gray wolf. And remember, just because we use certain terms and common names does not mean animals are closely related. See panda bears and red pandas, or even remember that maned wolves are not actually wolves, even though their common name is maned wolf. The paper even states that there is, quote, "no way that there was any gene flow between dire wolves and gray wolves," which makes that particular choice just so weird. Unless, of course, you're just trying to create something that looks like the animal in Game of Thrones, in which case it actually makes a lot of sense. Now, with all of that said, the science behind what happened here is absolutely incredible. It's stunning. It's breathtaking. They were able to create a new subspecies of gray wolf that is more like a dire wolf than other ones. Like, holy crap. Ignore everything I just said about how misleading all of this has been, and we will get back to that, I promise you. But let that scientific accomplishment sink in. This company has created a new subspecies of wolf using state-of-the-art CRISPR technology, doing gene editing, and generally just being incredible scientific geniuses. That is amazing. And while I'm very, very open to the debate about whether that should be a thing that happens, it has. And as a pure scientific achievement, it is undeniably incredible. It's also not the first time the company has done this. Just a few weeks ago, I reported on Zoo News that Colossal has created a woolly mouse, a mouse with some of the traits of a woolly mammoth, as they work to de-extinct that species as well. So, in just the last few weeks, Colossal has created 2 new subspecies of animals, just made them up in their lab. And this is a technology that obviously has a lot of questions to it, but there are at least some potential benefits. Take the woolly mouse. If we suddenly find ourselves in another ice age and normal species of mice are being wiped out, could Colossal breed woolly versions of various mouse species that would be able to survive and thrive and fill the same ecological niche that normal mice do now? Could they be created and released in such a way that those traits would quickly be bred into the normal mouse populations? That maybe, I honestly don't know. But when you really start to think about the possibilities, they are endless. And that's only considering them from the purely scientific side. There are all kinds of weird questions when you get into the ethical side, like if humans create animals, are we ethically responsible for them, more so than ones that we just share the planet with? What about the theological side? God created all the animals, but now we're creating animals. Does that make us God? I'm obviously not digging into all of that. But there are whole fascinating areas of thought that one can go to if man is suddenly creating new subspecies, or eventually new species, or heck, fully new animals. So yeah, the science and some of the other things that, might come up in thought is definitely fascinating and impressive, but it leads to the question of why this has been marketed like it has. The marketing of this discovery was anything but an accident. Colossal kept this discovery quiet until releasing it on an unsuspecting public on Monday of this week. And like I said, holy crap, my life has just been filled with discussions about it ever since. The media blitz was huge and it was strong. The cover of Time magazine with the word extinct crossed out with a red line with a caption that reads in part, quote, endangered species could be changed forever. A quote that seems like a promise, but to me actually portends great danger, which I'll get to here in a bit. That's a lot. And then the CEO of Colossal, a serial entrepreneur named Ben Lamb, appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, a podcast that is known for allowing people to voice their pseudoscientific advances and, frankly, sometimes utter bullcrap without being questioned. Rogan's approach is that he just gives people a space to share their own thoughts, and he just kind of goes along with it and doesn't question or endorse the ideas, which many of his fans call being open-minded, though I don't think I'm telling anyone in my audience anything surprising when I say that he has mostly used his space to advance conspiracy theories, pseudoscience, and other stuff that makes people feel smarter than they are. It's conspiracy theorist crap for the mainstream, and even if you want to do a media blitz that includes Joe Rogan for some reason, the fact that Lamb chose that as the place to make an appearance and peddle this nonsense in any deep detail says so much about the approach this company has taken to sharing this work. In going through that interview, for y'all, you're welcome, I did, and I was pained at one very obvious fact. Ben Lamb has incredible scientific tools at his disposal, but also has no clue what is actually being done with them. This feels to me more like his push to become the next person the general public accepts as a genius and turns into a billionaire without realizing that the dude himself has no clue what he's talking about. The next Elon Musk, basically. And going back to what I said before, the actual scientific achievements they have created here, that they have done, are incredible. So unless the goal is to fool the general public, to build the brand and the personal wealth of Lamb, why not treat it as such? Why not go to the appropriate places to sell this idea? Why not try to get a time cover where you say that you created a new subspecies of wolf and why that can help the planet? It's still incredible that they did that, which leads to the question, why lie about it? And that's the part that I can't get past with all of this. And of course, because it was in time and because it hit the press so hard and so fast, this was everywhere. I have not seen a single conservation topic or even an animal topic of any type blow up as big as this did. People on my Facebook and Instagram feeds who I know exclusively from the non-animal side of my life have been posting about this regularly, often just seeing the headline and believing it hook, line, and sinker. And I get it. Things are pretty crappy right now in the US and a lot of the world, honestly. And some good news could go a long way towards easing that pressure that is sitting on so many of our chests at this point. A long way. De-extinction would sure be incredible news, would sure be that good news. You know, if it wasn't a total fiction, which it is. Colossal also claims that this is the first time a species has been de-extincted, which frankly is not true. That honor goes to the Pyrenean ibex, a species that went extinct in the year 2000 and which scientists were able to clone successfully from genetic material in 2003. Now, sadly, the clone had a lung defect and passed away quickly, but that is actually the first time a species ever went extinct, was brought back, and then, sadly, went extinct again. So even if these dire wolves were a de-extinction, which again, they are not, it would not be the first time that has happened. And look, I can understand that that might seem a little pedantic, but the claim that it is the first time it has happened bothers me so much because there is no way an entire biotech company focused on the concept of de-extinction is unaware of this fact. So they are clearly just ignoring the truth to make themselves look more impressive. And that just leaves a really gross taste in my mouth. At the end of the day, whatever you think of the science behind this, the marketing really makes me question the motives of the company and its CEO. Scientific organizations should not be lying to the public or exaggerating what they've accomplished. And that's the thing, it's not just the term de-extinction. In the official announcement video Colossal put out, they flat out lie or twist many of the facts that they have in there. For instance, they claim that most of the world's scientists believe that in 25 years, 50% of the species on the planet could be extinct. Now, that's some, wiggle room in the phrasing, but I could not find anything where any scientists claim that. What many do claim is that 50% of species could be facing extinction, with a whole bunch of caveats, but that is not the same thing as saying basically, hey, in 25 years, we're going to lose half the species on this planet. It's fear-mongering, a tactic used to make people more willing to accept the, quote, salvation for these animals that de-extinction would present if, again, it was a real thing. The same video also spends a good bit of time talking about niches and how bringing back extinct animals can help to fill the ecological niches these animals filled. But that implies that ecosystems are static when we know that is not the case. The whole idea behind evolution is that our ecosystems are constantly growing, changing, and evolving as each individual piece changes and grows and evolves traits or devolves them as required, and each other piece reacts to those changes. Therefore, the ecosystems that housed dire wolves no longer exist, and those niches have been filled by other animals. It's not like there's just this static hole in our world waiting for direwolves to come back and refill it. And to be clear, there is absolutely no reintroduction plan for direwolves going back out into the wild. These three are being kept at Colossal's headquarters, where they will probably live their entire lives. These direwolves are not going to go out and fill a niche in the wild because A, the niche they filled no longer exists, and B, they aren't going out into the wild anyway, and, well, C, they aren't direwolves, a point I just keep needing to rehash for obvious reasons. Direwolves lived over 10,000 years ago, and Mother Nature has not just been sitting around waiting for Colossal to save her neck. My girl has moved on, and that's how this always works. When the dinosaurs were wiped out, the Earth's ecosystems didn't wait for scientists to come along and save them. They adapted and filled their own niches and moved on. It's estimated that one species goes extinct every day on average. Every one of those species has a niche that it fills, and every one of those species' niches gets filled in other ways. Bringing back extinct animals from a long time ago is just bringing them in to fill niches that no longer exist, and it just doesn't make sense. And now I will say this. A lot of the actual scientists that they talk to in the video do kind of acknowledge the truth. They refer to things like, quote, making gray wolves more like dire wolves and other things that aren't saying, we totally de-extincted gray wolves, dude, which I give those scientists a lot of credit for. And so that kind of leads us to the next thing I want to talk about here, which is, I feel like our world nowadays just makes everything, every person, every corporation, everything into either a hero or a villain, good guy or bad guy. And that's just not true. We have lost so much nuance in our conversation about people and organizations. And yeah, so far, I think most of what I have said kind of makes it seem like Colossal is a villain. They are the InGen of Jurassic Park, or the Biosyn of Jurassic Park, or whatever the bad corporation in the next Jurassic World movie is going to be. Obviously, I had to reference Jurassic Park and Jurassic World because so many people think that there's an apt comparison here, though, again, there really isn't. And I think that's what we have started doing more as a culture now. Like I said, we are making heroes or villains, and that's just not the case. I think a lot of the scientists at Colossal are doing amazing work, and the discoveries they are making and the processes they are creating could well change the future in amazing ways. But I do think that the marketing and the decision of the CEO to lean into the marketing lie, we'll call it, or at least the exaggeration, makes me worry about how the company plans to use this technology. But Colossal is doing more than just working on de-extinction, and that does need to be recognized here. Although, again, as we dig, it's going to get a little weird, so bear with me. But yeah, for instance, Colossal was involved in the creation of the EEHV vaccine that we have praised on this podcast since it came out. Now, for those listening to hear about direwolves who aren't caught up on this, EEHV stands for the elephant endotheliotropic herpes virus, a disease that kills a lot of elephants, both in human care and in the wild, and one that scientists have been trying to create a vaccine against for many years, finally succeeding in creating one and testing it for the first time in June of 2024. It appears to be working beautifully, and in fact, 2 young elephants recently got the disease at the Cincinnati Zoo after receiving the vaccination, and the symptoms were milder than usual, and both young elephants have pulled through, at least so far, a result that would not have been expected if they were not vaccinated. So I want to say, yay, Colossal, for doing that. But even this success has some controversy around it. I was actually surprised to learn about Colossal's involvement in the EEHV vaccination's creation because I didn't remember their name being dropped when I reported on the vaccine coming out. So I decided to dig a little deeper for this piece. And I looked at most of the press releases that were out around that time from the Houston Zoo and other partners that were involved in the creation of the vaccine. And also the first testing was done at the Houston Zoo, so that was the first one that I looked at. And their press release stated that the vaccine was created, quote, by virologists at the Baylor College of Medicine. And then later stated that Dr. Paul Ling at Baylor College of Medicine and the veterinary and elephant care teams at the Houston Zoo have been making steady progress toward the development of an EEHV vaccine. And on Tuesday, June 18th, the first dose was given to Tess, end quote. And obviously Tess is the first test subject. And in fact, their announcement goes on to explain that the vaccine, quote, is the result of a long-term collaboration between the Houston Zoo and Dr. Paul Ling at Baylor College of Medicine's Department of Virology and Microbiology. Over the past 15 years, this partnership has led to significant advancements in the study of EEHV. Many Association of Zoo and Aquariums, AZA, accredited zoos that care for elephants, the North American EEHV Advisory Group, European EEHV vaccine researchers, and organizations like the International Elephant Foundation, among others, have also collaborated in this research, end quote. And you'll notice, at this point, there's still no mention of Colossal. Only towards the end of acknowledgments in the press release does it say, quote, in recent years, additional funding has been contributed with the purpose of accelerating the vaccine activities by the International Elephant Foundation and Colossal Biosciences, end quote. But the Colossal press release on the topic heavily implies that Colossal was more involved in the research side of things, not just adding additional funding towards the end of the 15 years of progress. And again, this is that weird thing where I need to say this. Even if they just provided funding, that's huge. That helped make the vaccine happen quicker. It's arguable that the 2 elephants that were saved at the Cincinnati Zoo by this vaccine might not have been if they hadn't stepped in with that funding to advance the research more quickly. Funding research is wildly important, and they should totally take credit for doing that and all of that. But then they should be content with it. The company gave money to researchers who are helping to save elephant lives, and I love that so much. But why isn't it good enough to say that? They yet again did something awesome, something I consider heroic. But then they talk about it in a way that somehow makes me feel icky about the whole thing, even though I'm actually so happy this vaccine exists, and I'm so grateful they were able to give funding towards the end of the process that helped to accelerate it. Like, great job, team, that's awesome. But maybe just take the win instead of pretending you did more? And I do have to step back for a second and say that I don't know with 100% certainty what their contributions were. But I read every press release from every partner involved in the EEHV vaccinations creation that I could find, and only Colossal had themselves listed as anything other than financial backers at the end of a long process, which is not a great look in light of their, quote, de-extinction campaign, which we also know is not a thing. And looking at another really cool, interesting scientific thing that they did that's all wonky now because of how they talked about it. A small part of the announcement about the dire wolves who aren't actually dire wolves said that they have also done something to help red wolves. Now, if you know me at all, you know that I am incredibly passionate about wolf conservation and especially the red wolf situation in the United States. We talk about every birth, every death, every reintroduction, and every law that affects the small population of red wolves in the U.S. on this podcast. I am officially obsessed with them, so when I read that Colossal was involved in their conservation, I got really excited. But then I dug deeper, and again, I just found the whole thing confusing. See, Colossal claims to have cloned red wolves to help increase the very small population we have of the species already, which on the surface seems like a pretty awesome idea and got me very excited. But the announcement says they actually cloned Galveston Island coyotes, which they claim are a subspecies of red wolf, but that is just not true according to any of the taxonomists or geneticists that I could find outside of Colossal. There are red wolves in the wild that we have access to. There are even more red wolves in human care that we have access to. Getting subjects to clone, if that is the way to save red wolves, is not a challenge. I can name a whole bunch of zoos that have them and take great care of them. I've even met some on some of my adventures. This isn't like a dire wolf where you can't clone a living animal because there isn't one. If you want to clone red wolves, clone the damn red wolves and don't clone coyotes and claim they are red wolves. What is it with this trend? And to take it a step further, most people involved in wolf conservation do not believe that cloning wolves is the solution for problems that the population is facing. Our friends at the Wolf Conservation Society put out a great piece talking about how cloning could eventually be one of the many tools in the toolkit to save red wolves, but that it should only be considered once major steps have been taken to ensure the safety of the 16 or so wolves that still exist in the wild, as well as any additional wolves that join that population through breeding or introductions that might take place. Cloning red wolves doesn't help when red wolves don't have a place to safely live or laws that protect them from humans, and all of the time and effort and cost that went into cloning coyotes could have gone to help save actual red wolves. And yet, again, the science is impressive. The work that was done has advanced some cloning ideas in general, and as a conservation tool in general, the idea is a little further along now. And Colossal should be commended for doing that incredible science. It's just that, again, they are claiming to have done something that isn't quite what they have done, as far as I can tell. And in the process, they yet again seem to have ignored the conservation community entirely. They didn't ask anyone outside of their own hires whether this was a good idea or not in that community. In fact, outside of their own scientists, it seems that Colossal isn't just ignoring the conservation community, but ignoring the larger scientific community entirely. As I mentioned, they have ignored papers and conservation scientists already, and they also have not only not published any of their data or their processes for doing all of this, but they have not even made them available for peer review. Now, from a business standpoint, I can totally understand where they are coming from. Sharing new technologies and new processes and stuff makes them easier to replicate, and the commercialization of scientific discovery has frankly been considered problematic in this way since Watson and Crick first discovered the double helix nature of DNA and chose to profit from their findings rather than share them with the scientific community freely back in the 1950s. But this isn't how good science is done. Peer review is essential, an absolute requirement of the scientific process, and one that has simply been ignored by Colossal. And honestly, I think that is why there has been such pushback by the scientific community at large when it comes to this announcement. Not only are they exaggerating their accomplishments and putting fake titles to the work they have done, but they are doing all of that before actually going through the peer review process. That's just not how this is done. And there is a reason for that. I'm not some crazy traditionalist in general, but when it comes to the scientific process, peer review is essential. And by skipping that step, Colossal has opened themselves up to even more criticism than other discoveries might encounter. And it all goes back to the overall appearance of just shadiness, half-truths, and pseudoscience that leaves a really dark shadow over the actual incredible scientific achievements that the company has made. And, you know, there's another scary side of this, which as a conservationist bothers me. When I first heard about this announcement and started talking to so many of you about it, my immediate concern was that the general public would see the announcement and reach the conclusion that we have created de-extinction and that this means that extinction isn't the same threat it used to be, and therefore we should worry less about animals going extinct. But to put it another way, why donate to Safe Red Panda or Red Panda Network to help save red pandas when we can just whip up a new batch in Colossal's labs if they do go extinct? And some of the people I spoke to shared my concerns, while other people thought I was being a bit dramatic. What? Me? Dramatic? Never. But the thing is, I don't think much of the general public is doing a great job of looking for nuance in any story anymore. People read headlines and share them without even reading the story that they share, which often doesn't matter, as the vast majority of people that see said share also just absorb the headline and ignore any, actual information, never mind digging deeper than the one story that they saw the headline of. And this story really did take off to the point that I have seen it shared by so many people in my networks that have nothing to do with animals that I'm still mind blown by this whole thing. So I do believe that a lot of people will come to the conclusion that we can de-extinct animals without fully appreciating that we cannot do that and have not done that, period. Sure, if red pandas go extinct, we can all run into the woods and grab raccoons and paint them red and black, but that ain't bringing the species back. And let's be honest, that's basically what these supposed dire wolves are, except they used CRISPR instead of paint. They're much more scientifically impressive. That's basically what they are. And yes, I hope the mental image of me running into the woods with a few cans of paint and brushes to help save pandas by painting raccoons at least brought a small smile to your face in what has otherwise been a pretty heavy episode so far. But here's the thing, y'all. It does turn out that my concerns about people getting too excited about de-extinction are not unfounded. When I first had the thoughts, this hadn't happened yet. But since then, Doug Burgum, the current Secretary of the Interior of the Trump administration, recently tweeted or X'd or truthed or whatever the heck social media he used to do this. And he said the following, and I'm going to quote, it's a long one. Stay with me. The mission of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is to work with others to conserve, protect, and enhance fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the continuing benefit of the American people. The Department of the Interior is excited about the potential of de-extinction technology and how it may serve broader purposes beyond the recovery of lost species, including strengthening biodiversity protection efforts and helping endangered or at-risk species. The endangered species list has become like the Hotel California. Once a species enters, they never leave. In fact, 97% of species that are added to the endangered list remain there. This is because the status quo is focused on regulation more than innovation. It's time to fundamentally change how we think about species conservation. Going forward, we must celebrate removals from the endangered list, not additions. The only thing we'd like to see go extinct is the need for an endangered species list to exist. We need to continue improving recovery efforts to make that a reality, and the marvel of de-extinction technology can help forge a future where populations are never at risk. Since the dawn of our nation, it has been innovation, not regulation, that has spawned American greatness. The revival of the direwolf heralds the advent of a thrilling new era of scientific wonder, showcasing how the concept of de-extinction can serve as a bedrock for modern species conservation. The direwolf revival carries profound cultural significance as it embodies strength and courage that is deeply encoded within the DNA of American identity and tribal heritage. Breakthroughs of this nature will inspire leading minds and future generations of innovators to chase the impossible, capture it, and unleash its potential. The Department of the Interior looks forward to a vibrant future full of innovation that advances core missions such as wildlife conservation. And there you have it, folks. In that word salad, there's some seriously important stuff. Not only does the Trump administration seem to believe this is an actual de-extinction event, but that this heralds a new age of conservation where we can move away from regulations created to help save species. So much of what is said in that statement looks so good when you talk about saving species and conserving wildlife and the desire for the endangered species list to become extinct itself due to no longer being necessary. All of that is stuff we can all cheer on. But when you dig into it, the statement is anti-regulation and basically stating that with this technology, we can now save species in a different way than before. So we don't need to worry about those pesky regulations that keep our favorite species and their environment safe. Reading that actually turned my blood cold because it is proof that my initial concern that this discovery being couched in the language that is used by Colossal, namely de-extinction, will be used by bad faith actors to attack current conservation efforts, to cut funding from conservation organizations, and worse, to make the general public believe there is a new way to save species that doesn't involve any of that pesky reusable straw stuff or recycling plastic or conserving habitats, all that stuff. That is what that statement says. And sure, I may be greatly overstating the effect this will have on conservation attitudes, but based on that tweet and the fact that we seem to be living in the darkest timeline anyway, I do not think my concerns are invalid. So yeah, I have spent so much time reading and researching and talking to people about this topic that honestly, my desire to ever see or reread or watch anything Game of Thrones-ish again is completely gone because I don't ever want to see the words direwolf again. But to recap the main points quickly, Colossal Biosciences has created a new subspecies of gray wolf that they have labeled direwolves. These animals are not de-extincted, but they could arguably serve to fill a niche that our ecosystem has long since moved away from missing. They have also created woolly mice and cloned coyotes and called them red wolves and are working to de-extinct woolly mammoths, though those animals would also not be woolly mammoths and also have no ecological niche waiting for them to come and fill. As of now, there is no evidence that there is any way to de-extinct a species, with the possible exception of using DNA from members of recently extinct species to clone individuals, similar to what we have done with Przewalski's horses and California condors, though in those cases the species was not fully extinct before the cloning was done to bolster the population. The one time we did try that with a fully extinct species, it didn't work in any meaningful way, and the effort was abandoned. That's not to say that someday we might not stumble upon a process to do this. And it's actually quite possible that the work that the amazing scientists at Colossal are doing will lead to those discoveries. But whether that is the case or not, their specious at best claims not only serve to downplay the incredible science that they are doing, but also have the potential to have a real negative effect on the conservation of wild animals and wild spaces. Something that seems antithetical to their stated goals. And at the end of the day, it really all just leaves me wondering why. Why's it gotta be that way? And hey, that's my take on it. And if you can't trust a professional drummer on cutting-edge bioscience, then who can you trust? All right, let's get to the next bit. Animal holidays!
Animal, animal, animal holidays. Animal, animal, animal holidays.
All right, so April is Ape Awareness Month and National Frog Month. And then for our individual days, the 11th is National Pet Day. The 12th is World Hamster Day, so you're double dipping if you have pet hamsters. The 14th is National Dolphin Day. The 16th is Save the Elephant Day. And the 17th is National Crawfish Day and Bat Appreciation Day. And those are your animal holidays for the week. All right, so there you have it, folks. It's been a while since we did one of these special editions, and I hope you all appreciated all the work that went into it. I do want to take a moment to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, John Lewis, who is also here for stickers, and Kevin Williams. I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who contributed normal Zoo News stories or, some of this stuff for the actual special episode this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbook, Dr. Laura Schenk, Matt Patford, Dr. Natalie Taco, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky, The Malenskys. Sam Evans, Jacob Zinn, Ann Yoshioka, Anna McEachran, Marissa Fonseca, Marianne Rossi, Daniel Cohen, Tiana, not Tiana, Bush, Bethany Frymark, Nikki Morley, Dr. Zoe Rossi, and Jay Meredith. Thank you all so much for sending stuff in this week. And again, some of it will probably make it into next week's episode. We will be back here on Tuesday with another exciting interview episode, and then back on Friday with what I can only hope will be a normal Zoo News, because I need there to not be something this crazy again this week in the conservation world. Please, 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 please. And with all of that said, I guess the only thing left is to remind you all that the words music credits backwards are Steider Kiswen.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari, or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.